This entire debate is about the ethanol being brought in a hasty manner. Absolutely not.
So what your vehicle is designed to, you fill that fuel in that tank and don't use other fuel.
We have seen in last few months the West Asia crisis. This has given us additional strategic reserve of almost 60 days.
I don't think that a car owner will mind spending 5 to 10 rupees a liter extra to protect his car and put the correct fuel.
There could be some misinformation or maybe some vested interest. There are certain elements. Perhaps they don't want this program to succeed. They don't want us to go in the right direction as far as the energy security is concerned. Somebody, I believe, posted that ants are getting attracted to the fuel pumps. Absolutely bizarre. You take E85, the E85 has been priced 20 rupees cheaper than the normal E20 petrol, primarily because it will give you less mileage.
Fact remain that the blended petrol with ethanol will give the lower mileage.
ARAI report has said there might be some effect on the rubber parts, but over the years.
Hello and welcome to HT's weekly talk show, The Interview. There is a hue and cry, a raging debate on ethanol and petrol. Consumers are crying foul, alleging that the government is shortchanging them by pushing in E20. Simply put, petrol sold at fuel stations across India has 20% ethanol. Rumors, allegations, claims, counterclaims, and charges seem to be the order of the day. Amid all this is the consumer, the common man, the average Indian who does not know what to believe and what not to fall prey to. Is it about less mileage or engine performance? Is it about pollution? Or is it about importing less oil? As of now, there is a trust deficit. The man on the bike and one behind the wheel, both slamming the government. Today, we bring you two voices from the industry who will answer questions agitating minds. For starters, we have Mr. Deepak Balani, Director General of Indian Sugar and Bioenergy Manufacturers Association, to set the record straight. We will then speak to Mr. Vijendra Singh, President, All India Distillers Association, the national body representing the ethanol industry in India. Listen in to both of them in this edition of HT's weekly talk show, The Interview. Welcome to the show, Mr. Deepak Balani, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me in your wonderful show.
Let me begin with the basics and please educate our viewers. What is this ethanol story? And I'm using the word story.
Ethanol is a fuel which is derived from crop, and crop residue goes through a proper distillation process. This is an organic fuel which is blended with petrol, which is the same class of fuel and used in all surface mobility solutions, including your two-wheelers and four-wheelers. Brazil has been using ethanol for almost 45 years. So this is nothing new. We started ethanol way back in 2001 with a mere blending of almost 1 to 1.5%. By 2014, we were blending around 4.5%. The ethanol blending program was brought in 2014. Sugar industry alone invests 40,000 crore in putting up the capacity for manufacturing ethanol from sugarcane juice and sugarcane molasses. Subsequently, when the requirement went beyond E10, E15, there was a need felt that sugar alone will not be able to suffice the requirement. Then the grain was brought in, that means maize, rice, which is a surplus FCI rice, and the broken rice. So now we have a multi feedstock. Perhaps sugarcane is almost 30%, 70% is made out of the grain, which perhaps we are blending in the country.
You know, you use the word same thing as petrol. Actually, that is where the problem is. Ethanol blended petrol, according to most reports, is not the same thing, quote unquote, as petrol.
See, this is same class of fuel. If you see the formula of it is a denatured alcohol, which is completely technically fit to be blended with petrol. The only issue here is that the calorific value of ethanol is slightly lesser than the petrol. But most of the vehicles today in the country are E20 compliant.
We'll come to that. But before that, you also gave the example of Brazil. But you know, in Brazil, it is not mandatory and people have a choice to choose their fuel. Secondly, Brazil also brought in this in a phased manner rather than the rushed manner in which the Indian government is pushing this 5 years ahead of the deadline. So, will you just address both these?
Brazil has only two types of fuel. Their base blend today is E27, which they have decided to increase to E30 by 2030. The second type of fuel they have is E100, which is 100% ethanol. So they have choice between 100% ethanol and 27% ethanol. In our country today, we only have E20 as a base blend, and government has very recently launched E85 fuel, but that E85 fuel is only for the new flex fuel vehicles and not for the existing vehicles. Now, secondly, this entire debate is about the ethanol being brought in a hasty manner. Absolutely not. This program is being implemented for almost 20 years now. And we have, in a very calibrated way, increased the blending. It started with 1% to 5%. We went to 10%, 12, 15, 17, and finally we have reached 20%. We have achieved this 5 years ahead of its timeline because that has made us more energy secure. And specifically when we have seen in last few months the West Asia crisis, this has given us additional strategic reserve of almost 60 days. You know, if we have not really felt the crisis on our heads, it is also because of ethanol, which we are blending with petrol today. But it has almost taken 20 years to reach here.
Yes, but you know, where was the need to, of course, the West Asia crisis notwithstanding, but to fast track it by 5 years? Because the preparedness, at least at the level of the consumer, does not seem to be there, whether it is mental preparedness or preparedness on the ground. So the country psychologically was not ready for this. And that perhaps is the reason why the so called advantages which you're talking about seem to be pushed under the carpet.
I believe there are two answers for this. One is that I don't think that we were not technically prepared. There is absolutely no technical issues as far as ethanol blending is concerned. But yes, I believe we should have done a better job in terms of consumer awareness. Till about 3-4 months back, we were doing a E20 blending. We E10, E15, E17, absolutely no problem, nothing. It has only started very recently. And I believe there could be some misinformation or maybe some vested interest, but there are certain elements. Perhaps they don't want this program to succeed, or maybe they don't want us to go in the right direction as far as the energy security is concerned. But yes, we could have done more consumer awareness initiatives, both by the government and the industry. I think that is something which could have been done better.
So, in that sense, against what you're saying that we could have or the government could have done more for consumer awareness, are the people justified in crying foul and feeling shortchanged?
Majority of the people have absolutely no issues with ethanol blended petrol.
That I don't think is right.
It was a bizarre claims which have been made by some of the people and this trying to create panic. Somebody, I believe, posted that ants are getting attracted to the fuel pumps.
Because there is sugar in ethanol.
Absolutely bizarre. Sugar is not directly mixed with petrol. As I said, sugar goes through a process of fermentation. There are chemical processes. It becomes a proper fuel. So there's absolutely no chance and technically absolutely no basis of saying that. Most of the people are not technically aware what is ethanol. That's why it's very easy to misguide them. But having said that, the petrol stations will have to also do a lot of awareness programs whenever people are coming to fill the petrol in their tanks. I believe those people will also have to start educating the consumer so that they are educated based on the hard science and not on the misinformation.
Yes, but as you said, and I agree with you, that the consumer awareness should have happened before this was pushed in.
Both have to go hand in hand. But again, it could have been better. But yes, I think we're not late. We still have a chance of educating everyone properly so that they are completely aware of what is ethanol and must be reassured that there is absolutely no problem of ethanol blended with petrol, because this is not happening for the first time in the country. There are many countries who have had this for years and they have been successful running their ethanol blending programs. So I believe that is something which has to be reinforced with the consumers.
You spoke about vested interest, and perhaps you're right, because the E20 was actually rolled out last year in 2025. So, why the hue and cry now? It's not something which has come in today, but this hue and cry has happened in the last 2 months.
Yes, I don't know what is exact reason why this has really come in last 2 months. As I very rightly told by you that we have been using E20 for last 1 year. And it is not only 1 year. Before that, when we achieved 17-18%, in lot of pockets, it was an average 17%. That means in various pockets, we were already using E20. It has been used. And we have not seen any complaints as far as engine is concerned or anything else. But what has happened that suddenly in last 2 months, so much of hue and cry? So that is something which is beyond my understanding.
Are there political players behind this? What would you say?
Ma'am, I will not be able to comment on that because that is not my area of strength.
Or you don't want to?
No, I really don't know about it. So I am absolutely clueless. We are industry people. We can clarify on the technical grounds, on the usage, on the experience, as far as the ethanol is concerned, vehicle is concerned. But something beyond that, it is difficult for us to comment.
I think more than the E20 rollout, it is the timing that is important. Had the original 2030 target been kept, many older vehicles, particularly those before 2012, ones would have completed their running life. So the damage, if at all, would have been lesser and probably the consumer satisfaction higher.
Let me clarify on this particular point. So there are two class of vehicles on the road today. One, after 2023, which are materially E20 compliant. So obviously there is absolutely no problems, nothing to be thought about. The vehicles which have been actually E20 materially compliant after 2023. The second class of vehicle is your E10 compliant, which are basically before 2023. Now, having said that, before the mandate of E20 has come out or something beyond E20 came out, the research agency, for example, ARAI, there's IOCL R&D, there are various agencies who have done a very comprehensive test and trial on all types of vehicles. And only after they have found that this will have no effect on the engine, that is when the entire thing has been rolled out. For example, Maruti has also quoted that last year they serviced almost 2.84 crore vehicles, and out of that, around 1.5 crore vehicles were the E10 compliant vehicles. And in all those vehicles, not even a single complaint of any engine damage or any effect because of the ethanol or E20. So I think we should be very clear that E20 is 100% compliant with all existing vehicles, whether they are E10 compliant or E20 material compliant.
While you mention Maruti, it has also confirmed a mileage drop, and auto companies have put the reduction to 3 to 4% as compared to E10. So the low mileage and poor engine performance is an angst.
See, the calorific value of ethanol is around 25% less than the petrol. So, right. So it is around 3%. If your car is giving 20 kilometers a liter, it boils down to a reduction of 0.6 kilometer per liter, which is very insignificant. Please also mind that the mileage drop could happen because of various other reasons. Place like Delhi, where we are stuck in the traffic for hours, sometimes the vehicle is not maintained properly. So, having said that, the effect of ethanol E20 over E10 is only to the extent of, as I said, if it is giving 20, it will give you 19.4, and that is very, very insignificant if you compare to the advantages we derive because of that, specifically on the power, because ethanol has a higher octane rating. It has an octane rating of 108.5, while the petrol alone has a octane rating of 85. And E20 is average octane rating of 95, which makes the compression ratio better. There are anti-knocking properties. It makes the vehicle better because there is a wonderful oxygen molecule in the ethanol, which does greater good for the engine. So I believe on an average, ultimately because of the positivity also which is there attached with the ethanol, it does good for the engine and good for the vehicle.
If you will allow me to use the word a weak defense, that's what I'm going to say now. When you say that there is a drop in mileage, but it is insignificant. The Automotive Research Association of India has said that using E20 in E10 compliant vehicles show deterioration in rubber parts of fuel system components, hoses, gaskets, etc., and those may need replacement. You were talking about Maruti, even they have confirmed a mileage drop,
Absolutely. As I said, the mileage drop is very insignificant.
but it is there.
Yes, obviously, because the calorific value of ethanol is slightly lesser than the petrol. For example, you take E85, the E85 has been priced 20 rupees cheaper than the normal E20 petrol, primarily because it will give you less mileage to compensate the loss of mileage for the consumer. It has been priced 20 rupees a little lesser. But as I said, it is very insignificant if you take E20 and compare with E10. And there are a lot of pluses in that. So we also have to keep that in mind.
What about the deterioration in rubber parts of fuel systems and other components?
See, there is absolutely no effect on the metal parts. ARAI report has said that there might be some effect on the rubber parts, but over the years, over the 10, 15 years or 8 to 10 years. But that could also happen because of the wear and tear. But they've also said in 1.5 crore vehicle which they have serviced last year, with their older vehicles, they have now not found any damage to the even plastic parts. As Maruti also has said that they have not found any damage in those 1.5 crore vehicles which they have serviced and which are prior to 2023.
It could also be the other way around, that what Maruti has serviced, it was not detected. While on a bigger scale, they would be there. Like you are saying, that the association, what they have said, may be an exception and not a rule, which means that the rule is nothing gets damaged. What the association is saying is an exception. But taking that argument forward, what Maruti is saying also could be an exception.
In fact, at our level also, we have had some testing done by IIT Kanpur. The report says that there is no significant or any sort of damage to the plastic parts or the metal parts if we use higher blend of ethanol. So that is something which we have already established. There could be exception because if there are some parts, maybe that is why they are very, very inexpensive part. And perhaps there is a possibility that they could have got anyway damaged because of the wear and tear and because of the maintenance. And maybe if the vehicle, in any case, gets old by 7 to 10 years, there is a possibility that some of the parts are to be replaced because of the wear and tear and because the number of kilometers and how we have really maintained the cars. So there are various factors affecting that, and we cannot attribute the entire thing to ethanol alone.
But it is possible, because when you use the word not very significant and wear and tear, these somehow come as, again, if you will allow me to use the word, a weak defense. And somewhere what the consumer is saying seems to be right on the ground, or what his experiences.
I believe I still stand on my ground that I don't see and I don't have any knowledge. Either we have heard from OEMs that there has been any damage to the plastic parts.
You know, you're using the Maruti example. Let me give you a example of the Audi Q3, where the user manual of 2024 says that it recommends only E5 and E10 fuel. What would you say to that? And that is 2024.
No, I'm not aware of this Audi case, but let me tell you, most of the cars I've heard that some of the manuals say that E10. So the manuals were written based on the blend existing at that time. But having said that, all these notions have been put to rest, and ethanol E20 has only been brought in after a proper technical testing. That there has been a very exhaustive testing. Only after that it has been brought in and it has been confirmed by all the OEMs. All the OEMs today have said that all the existing vehicles are completely compliant with E20 and there is absolutely no issues with that.
Yes, they seem to be saying what the government wants to hear. And the complaints of the consumers seem to be falling on deaf ears. And the research that you're talking about, there seems to be a big gap between the so called, and I would use the word alleged research, and the consumer who's facing issues on the ground.
I don't agree with you. We are talking about one of the most renowned technical agency in the country, following all international testing protocols, certified, accredited agencies. So I tend to believe that they have done their job properly.
Then, coming back to my original question, why the hue and cry? The consumer who did not say anything when E10 was there, E12 was there, or even E17 was there. Why is he today creating a ruckus? Why? Because there must be some issues with his vehicle. Why is the consumer crying foul? That is my basic concern.
This has started everything on the social media. There has been some misleading post, misinformed post, and people have tend to believe those posts. I believe that is where everything has started, and that is why I have said that more awareness programs, they have to be told what is the fact. The government, the industry, everyone is trying to educate all the consumers and trying to put their fears to the rest. That is something which is being done and which has to be also intensified and properly told to the consumers.
You know, when you say social media posts, I take your point. Of course, they are exaggerated, misinformation is there, but at the same time, where I'm coming from is real consumer experience. My colleagues in the office have told me that their mobiles or cars are stalling. The performance is not the same.
Why it has suddenly every vehicle, as you said, has started developing a problem in last 2 months. Why this problem was not there in January or maybe last year? We have been using E20 for almost 1.5 years. And before that, we were at E19, we were at E18, E17. So the delta was very less. We are not talking about delta of 10%, we're talking about delta of 2-3%.
Let me give you a counter argument. It is because it perhaps the deterioration started in 2025. By the time come up, it is 2026. And now, because it is E20, which is a higher blending, it has started showing up more.
I don't believe this. Technically, I don't think it's a factual perspective. I believe there is absolutely no truth. The problem, as I said, in the engine, in the bike could happen because of any reason, because of the lack of maintenance, the driving sense, there could be bad roads, there could be perhaps in some pockets, maybe adulterated petrol. So I don't believe that it could be attributed to E20 because E20 is something which is tried and tested. There's absolutely no technical issue.
The conflict, I think, is between the technical findings and the real issues people are facing. And while you talk of upkeep, maintenance, bad roads, adulterated petrol, all these have been issues which have been existing. We have lived with them. It is only the E20 which seems to be now giving a new dimension to all these existing problems. So that is where I would like you to clarify and educate us and say Why is this happening? Because what I'm telling you is neither social media, I'm telling you experiences of my colleagues, I'm telling you real time stories which I have heard.
I don't really think, based on the technical facts, that anything what you said is could be attributed to ethanol or E20. Technically, this is not possible. A lot of countries have used this. So this is something, this is not something which is new. And I don't believe that the problems which is just said is because of the ethanol. It could be something else.
You know, when you talk of other countries, I take that, I take your point. But the difference between India and some of the developed countries is that India uses and Indians depend a lot on second-hand vehicles. So the issue is not the new vehicles, the issue is the old vehicles. The India story, as I said, is a bit different. So how do we address that? So giving that example somehow does not fit in here in this country.
When I said that the government has mandated E20 and after testing and trial of all the vehicles which have been delivered after 2023 and before 2023, that means that the ethanol E20 has been tested on all existing vehicles. Most of the auto manufacturers keep a huge cushion in terms of the tolerance level. All older vehicles have also been made in such a way they have been compatible after testing has verified it with the existing blend of ethanol. So the existing vehicle, the older vehicles have been taken care when the government has mandated E20 blending. So technically, I don't tend to believe that there would be any effect on the existing and older vehicles.
But you do agree with the association report that there could be, and I'll use the word could be, deterioration in rubber parts and drop in mileage, however insignificant that may be.
There could be some minor loss in mileage as far as the ethanol is concerned. That I am saying.
You know, you are speaking about research, you are speaking about what the government has done, and I take that point. But the problem is that there is a trust deficit today between what the government is saying, between the government based research, between those trials and the consumer. And that is why, coming to my original question, the consumer is feeling shortchanged.
I believe it is again a matter of explaining it to them. We should take pride in the fact that we are using our own fuel and what ethanol has done to our country. I believe almost 1.9 lakh crore of foreign exchange saved, almost 1.5 lakh crore of additional payment to the farmer. Sugarcane alone supports almost 5.5 crore farmer and families. We have additional 20% strategic reserve in terms of ethanol.
So, in other words, what you're saying is that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages.
Definitely, yes. There are hardly any disadvantages and there are huge advantages.
With your interactions with the government, do you think there is ultimately the target is E25, E27, and even E30? And somewhere this E20 is an intermediate step.
I am not aware if the government is planning anything beyond E20.
What is the sense you're getting from your interactions with the government?
No, I have absolutely no sense of anything going beyond E20 as of now. We perhaps are or should focus on E85 and E100 the way the Brazil has done. See, there is absolutely no two ways of India trying to achieve independence in energy security. And we must do everything to be shielded by the imported crude or the probability of any disruptions in future. We should take forward multiple feedstock or multiple surface mobility solutions which could make us energy secure. We will have to get into these pathways so that we are much lesser reliant on the imported crude. On the ethanol, Brazil today has achieved an average blend of almost 50-52% thanks to their flex fuel technology, where they are able to dispense E100, which is 100% ethanol. I'm very happy to say that India has launched its first flex fuel vehicle only last month and with the E85 fuel. going forward, I see that more OEMs will launch their flex fuel vehicles, which perhaps will give a choice to the customer whether they want to fill E85, E100 or E20. And that is perhaps the right roadmap for our country to go forward with.
Point well taken. The flex fuel vehicles, are we ready for that? And second, when we are talking of flex fuel, why does that choice now, not in flex fuel, but why can't the consumer have the choice today to go for E10 or E20? That is exactly the choice I was talking about currently. Since we don't have the flex fuel vehicles at the moment, why should the consumer not be given the choice between E10 and E20 and wait for the flex fuel vehicles to come in?
E20 is an established fuel, and I don't think there is any discussion on the choice. I believe E20, as I said, is a compliant for existing vehicles. So we can always keep our base blend at E20 and try to see that flex fuel can come, which can perhaps increase our ethanol blend to 85% or maybe 100% ethanol. And I am talking about choice between 100% ethanol.
I'm talking about a choice between E10 and E20 at the moment.
But there's absolutely no requirement for that.
Consumer satisfaction is the need, is the necessity, at least as an interim step, which means that, okay, for about a year, allow both till the alternative flex fuel vehicles come in.
The consumer satisfaction has to be there. And I believe technically we are absolutely fine as far as E20 is concerned. What I am talking about is going forward. I am talking about a choice between E20 and E100, which only flex can give. And that is why we are asking government also to start working on the policy environment where most of the OEMs can come with the flex fuel vehicles on the road. And that is something which we are also hoping that government will come with the regulatory frameworks and a proper policy so that most of the OEMs are encouraged to make flex fuel vehicles in the country.
So, which means that the choice is later, but E20 is mandatory, which is where I think the angst is.
E20 is something which is here to stay.
Two other fears which I would like you to decode and put to rest. The issue of cold starts and these vehicles giving trouble in winter, and the fear that insurance companies will not honor claims any longer because of blending.
All the insurance companies have reiterated that the warranties would be valid and there's absolutely no problem in terms of warranty.
What about cold starts?
Now, I believe we have already seen one winter. E20 was started last April. I have not seen any complaint as far as the cold start is concerned. Cold countries have been using higher blended of petrol with ethanol. So the technology now is so foolproof that it is able to take care of all these issues as far as ethanol blending is concerned.
Two last points before I let you go. One, the cost factor of flex fuel vehicles. And second, it is being suggested that those who can afford to could opt for octane 93 or 100 in their cars. Is that recommended rather than walk the hazy path of the blend? And I know you're going to contradict the word hazy path, but I will still ask.
No, I think let me again set the records right. From 1st of April this year, government has mandated that E20 petrol will have the octane number of 95. And all the petrol today which is dispensed is having a higher octane number of 95. I think that answers your question. And as far as the flex fuel is concerned, there has to be more policy formulations, conducive policies so that the manufacturers are encouraged to manufacture flex fuel vehicles. Manufacturing a flex fuel vehicle is slightly expensive. If flex engines have to be bought by the consumers, there has to be a cost factor which has to be brought down. At least it becomes comparable to the existing vehicle. Otherwise, obviously, if there is an economic factor, people will not buy it. Today, the GST on the flex fuel is very high. If we can bring the GST down to the level of what we are giving to EVs, at least we will bring the cost of flex fuel at par with the EVs so that the consumers will be encouraged to buy flex fuel vehicles. And on the fuel, as I said, E85 is already cheaper by 20%. If tomorrow government decides to go for 100% ethanol, I'm sure they will also have a much reasonable, cheaper E100 than E85 or E20. So,
Mr. Balani, one last word to set rest doubts and reassure the consumer.
reliance has to be on the hard science. I want to assure all the consumers or the viewers who are watching the program that E20 has been brought in after a thorough understanding, thorough testing, thorough trials. There is absolutely no reason of any concern as far as the engine damage is concerned or anything else. Please rely on the hard science.
Mr. Deepak Balani, thank you very much. Thank you for your time and thank you for attempting, and I'm using the word attempting, to set rest doubts.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
At this point, I'm going to bring in Mr. Vijendra Singh to give his perspective and how he sees the situation unfolding. Welcome to the show, Mr. Vijendra Singh, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me here.
Let me start with the ongoing controversy. What has led to the controversy on E20? Because it has been there since 2025. So, why the hue and cry now?
I think it's partly misinformation, and there will be some vested interest maybe there to derail the good program which Government of India started. This is going on for last, you already said, more than 1.5 year. And before that, we had 15%, 10%. So I don't think something has cropped up overnight, and we must stop this information by proper technical inputs.
Before we come to what the government did right, let me ask you, where did the government go wrong? Was it the intention or was it the timing?
I think the government did not able to convey the message to the public advantage of E20 or ethanol blending program per se, because they never thought that this kind of backlash can come suddenly, and they were caught unaware. When we had the difficulty in getting the crude to the country, we had difficulty buying the correct price, our rupee was depreciating. So it's a worst moment to attack this kind of program, and that is what invested does come into picture, because they want to damage the good program.
What is it that you would like the consumer to know at this point of time?
I would request consumer to take the information from the OEM, or car companies or two-wheeler company where they're using this blended petrol, and follow the instruction. Not go by the WhatsApp universities and misinformation being spread. Forget that part.
You know, the problem is that the OEMs are kind of government sponsored. And when you say go to the car companies, let me give you an example. A user manual of Audi Q3 of 2024 says that it recommends only E5 and E10 fuel. So, what would you say to that?
I think they should go to the Audi again and check, can we use E20 this vehicle or no. If they say Audi say no, don't use E20, then you buy the pure petrol, which is also available many places. Pure petrol without blending.
Which means octane 93 and octane 100.
Yeah, it means 95 and above. So what your vehicle is designed to, you fill that fuel in that tank and don't use other fuel.
Yes, but you know, Mr. Singh, that is where the problem is. The older vehicles are not designed for E20. They are not compatible. So what do those people do? And while you are giving this option of using octane 95 and above, it is expensive. So kind of out of the reach for the common man.
I don't think that a car owner will mind spending 5 to 10 rupees a liter extra to protect his car and put the correct fuel. Having said this, I don't think as a user, I have great difference in using E10, E20. If your car is E10, it means it can take the ethanol. All parts are suitable for ethanol. And if it is E20, it doesn't make any difference with the engine per se. Then unfortunately what is happening, the old car give me trouble. Someone go to the roadside mechanic and he asks, okay, what is the problem? Oh, you had the problem because ethanol. I mean, like you had the fever period, everybody says viral fever. Nobody knows what is happening. Just put a say viral fever. So same thing happening here. If we as a consumer go to the right place, go to the OEM workshop and tell them this is my difficulty, what should I do? They will definitely advise you what should be done.
But you know, the OEMs are kind of tutored, if I may use a strong word, by the government. So somewhere there is a trust deficit. And whatever is being told is not really being believed.
Well, I think that is the bridge we have to gap as the media and policy supporters. We should convey this in no hidden term that what is to be done, correct thing should be done, and the trust should be built up again. There is a loss of trust.
You know, there are 2 points. One, that those who are agitating are saying that we have no problems with E20. You bring in E20, but allow us to use what they are calling a protection fuel, which means give us a choice till during the transition period and let us use what we are using if we want to and switch to E20 if our cars are compliant.
Fully agree with this. And if you see, our association has been advocating this policy only. Give a choice to consumer. If he go to pump, he can buy 100% petrol without blending. He can buy E20, he can buy E80, 85, or we are advocating give E100 also to him. And based on his ability to buy fuel, based on ability suitability of the vehicle, he can buy any fuel from the pump. However, having said this, the oil marketing company will take some time to follow this process. And I think this is actively being considered by policymakers to give this option. And if you notice, some many petrol pumps have this facility. They have the high octane fuel, which is super. I don't know what then different name they have given, and you can choose definitely this fuel.
You see, we are also talking of two-wheelers. While you say a car owner would not mind paying that much, I'm not sure of that. But however, we are also talking of two-wheelers. And a person who owns a two-wheeler may not want to go in for that high purified petrol, which is expensive. So why not give him the choice of, instead of E20 during the transition period, he can choose and continue using E10. That is the protection fuel we are talking about.
I got your point, but unfortunately, economy doesn't work that way. As you know, the crude price is very high for the last more than 2 months practically, and the pure petrol price is already jacked up. We also advocated the government that consumer must be given the choice.
Is the government considering that option?
I believe yes, they are thinking about it, but it cannot be done overnight because it needs a lot of logistic infrastructure. Like we have in one region, it is some petrol dispensing without blending. So we need to increase the more number of pumps in that vicinity. However, I'm again emphasizing one thing again. If any vehicle can run 10 E10, he had no difficulty running E20 also.
Well, you know, there are contrary opinions to that because there is a issue of low mileage, there is a issue of engine stalling, there are issues of cold starts. So I'm not sure what the technical feasibility that the government is flagging is good on the ground because there are contradictions to that.
It's not a contradiction. Fact remain that the blended petrol with ethanol will give the lower mileage. Mileage will drop by about 5%. So there's a fact on the table. This engine stalling, nobody knows and nobody can prove that so far. But I'm again saying, if your car can take 5%, 10%, it can take 20% also without stalling the engine. Ethanol have two difficulty in operating. One, you have if you have rubber parts, they can wear out. So with ethanol, so need to have better, don't have rubber part, you should have some different material for that. And that to be replaced with that different material.
Okay. So while you say that low mileage is a problem, while you say that rubber parts can deteriorate, so then this hue and cry or the consumer concern is justified.
In the old vehicles.
Yes. So then a lot of Indians and a lot of people in India have old vehicles. So the problem really is real.
But thanks God will deteriorate anyway. How can we think that a 10-year old vehicle can get the same performance as 1 or 2 years old vehicle? We have to see in totality. If vehicle is old, you'll give the performance will deteriorate.
So you are putting this to the vehicle being old. So what do people who own old vehicles, what should they do? Junk their vehicles?
No need to junk the vehicle. They need to repair it properly. Whatever mechanical is required to be done. Repaired as per the need.
What is the contribution of E20 in this deterioration?
We cannot estimate that way.
But there is a contribution.
Contribution can only be rubber parts, nothing more than that.
What are the myths and misconceptions about E20 and E25? And what are the facts?
E25 not in picture still today. E20 is already in practice. Misconception about my engine rating, as you said it. I have some difficulty in starting the vehicle. You said this also. So these are all misconception. E20, E30 and E85, E100 being used many countries world over many years. It's something we are not discovering new here. You will take the example of Brazil, take the example of US.
While you're talking of Brazil, Brazil has given the option of selecting fuel, while here it is mandatory. Secondly, Brazil did bring in a phased program, while here we seem to be pushing it and fast forwarding it by 5 years.
No, we are not fast forwarding in per se, because our branding program is started in 2010 actually. So we achieved this number in 15 years.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of E20?
It has many advantages. One is a homegrown product. We produce locally. When we produce locally, we buy raw material locally. And raw material in this case is rice, corn, and sugarcane. And these are product of farmers in the country. So when you buy this product, the money from ethanol go to their pocket. And when you produce ethanol in the country, you create employment. When you consume ethanol, it gives the less pollution. It's a long-term policy where country can have energy security also. When there's a war, there's a disturbance in the supply line, we get nervous whether we're going to get petrol or no, we are going to get diesel or no. So once you have the homegrown security, and it is very mandatory for any country to become energy security. Last advantage could be we don't pay to pay dollar to someone to buy fuel.
What are the disadvantages?
I can't see any disadvantage of this operation.
All right, let me put this differently. What are the short term losses versus the long term gains? The consumer concerns versus the big picture or the India advantage?
Big picture is very much intact. If we can do 20% today, we can go to 30%, we go to 40%, we go to 50%. It means similar amount of import of crude being reduced. And as our dependence upon the import reduces, our economy has a better health, a better plus points here.
How real are the consumer concerns?
Consumer concerns are temporary. When flex vehicle come, they are suitable to take any kind of blending from 0 to 100%. So the whole debate will be irrelevant at that point of time. So going forward, when a consumer go to the buying a car, he has the option to buy flex vehicle also. And when he go buy this vehicle, he get the cheaper fuel also.
You know, the flex vehicle policy is fine, but that would also mean a large proportion of consumers discarding and junking their vehicles and going in for the flex vehicles, which would be expensive. So that is a catch here. Because in India, everyone doesn't go in for a new vehicle. The second hand market is flourishing.
Well, India sells about 2 crore two-wheelers in a year, 50 lakh four-wheelers in a year, 45 to 50 lakh. So we are targeting that segment, that where and anybody make a choice now, he can buy flex vehicle, he can buy EV also.
How real are the fears of higher blends, E25 and later E85 and E100?
I think it'll be too early to comment on these numbers, because this will be done only when proper study is made by the OEM and the oil marketing company and other agency involved into it. And when they find it suitable, then only it will be launched. However, our association always advocating flex vehicles.
You know, using food crops like maize and broken rice to make ethanol will push up prices, particularly for animal feed. Also, growing sugarcane for ethanol means huge quantities of water, while there is acute shortage in certain states in India. Every ton of maize a distillery uses for fuel is a ton that cannot go to a chicken or a cow. Since there is a cap on sugar for ethanol production, maize is the next option for producing ethanol. So, what would you say to this?
We'll discuss this in part. First of all, food security versus fear. So for ethanol production, we are using only the excess food which is cannot be as a no outlet. I'll give 2-3 example here. Like rice, government is carrying a lot of rice in the warehouses and they don't know what to do with it. So converting that asset to the opportunity is a good decision and should be done without affecting the food security. If there is a problem in availability of rice, definitely food will get the priority over the fuel. Similarly, in the corn, one corn was being produced about 35 million in the country. Now it jumped to the 55 million in the country. So as you start growing more corn for the conversion of ethanol, more corn start being produced by the farmer, and it helping their the well-being and their economics of the farming. So I don't think we should be worried about the food versus fuel debate here.
What about animal feed? Maize is the basic which animals use. So every ton of maize a distillery uses, that ton does not then go to the chicken or the cow.
It's not like that. We are taking the extra corn. We are not taking away anybody's corn from their food.
Yes, but when you are diverting that for ethanol, then there is a problem.
As I told you, our production increased from 35 million to 55 million. And that is what is it? 20 million used for the ethanol production so far. We are only taking away the food which cannot be used anywhere.
Problem of water shortage?
Water shortage cannot be linked to the ethanol production per se. Water utilization is farm requirement, and farmer will use the water as per his requirement availability.
But he will grow more sugarcane for ethanol.
No, we are not producing more per se. We are only using the excess.
As the ethanol production goes up, you would not be using only excess, you would also be diverting or producing more, and which is where, when you talk of sugarcane, the water shortage may come in.
I think policy adequately control the situation where they will not take the food to the ethanol.
Fair enough, they will not take that. But if you have to grow more sugarcane for ethanol, then obviously the consumption of water will also increase because the production of sugarcane will increase. So, what do you say to states where there is acute water shortage?
Let me explain here. The crop will be planted where the water availability is there. If water availability is not available, no crop can happen. We should not worry about the farmer using water. They will use water anyway. That part is not controlled by the industry per se. That is controlled by the farmer.
Correct. So, if sugarcane is required for ethanol production and the farmer is going to grow just as much as he can, then there will be diversion.
Diversion means diversion from the food to ethanol. Is not happening. What is being diverted, which is likely to be not consumed by the consumer.
At another level, Bhutan has declined to buy E20 from India and said it would only buy normal petrol because ethanol blended fuel is a challenge in the hills.
Obviously, if they find it unsuitable, they don't buy it. Maybe that they don't have a new vehicle, they are all vehicle very old, they don't want to take a chance. It's okay.
Exactly. Underscores the point of what is happening here. There are old vehicles, we have all kinds of terrain. So, one size fits all will not work here, like the Northeast, where the terrains are challenging. So, somewhere, if it does not work for Bhutan, while you give examples of Brazil and advanced countries, the example of Bhutan works better for India because old vehicles are there, challenging terrain is there.
I don't think we should compare Bhutan situation with India, where we're talking of this kind of terrain only, maybe 1%, 2% of the whole population of vehicles. For this situation like this, we cannot abandon a good policy and long-term policy and abandon the policy for this small region.
All right, one last question. What is it that the consumers need to know and do not?
They need to know what your vehicle is required in terms of maintenance, precautions while using this E20 petrol, and they should follow this strictly this guidelines.
Though I have my doubts on whatever claims you're making, however, I will let it go. And on that note, let me thank you, Mr. Singh, for being here with us and trying to clarify and set rest doubts.
Thank you very much. Pleasure here.